All right, today we're going to try and make sense of the world of big business in India. And to do that, we're going to use a guide, what we're calling a corporate governance compass. Let's see how this thing points the way. So let's start with the most basic question, right? When you have these massive corporations worth billions with thousands of employees, how on earth do you make sure they're playing fair? How do you keep them honest and working for the good of everyone involved? Well, the answer is a solid system of governance. So, think of corporate governance exactly like that compass we talked about. It's not just one single rule. It's a whole framework, a system of principles and practices that keeps a company pointed in the right direction. It's all about balancing that drive for profit with a deep sense of responsibility. Okay, so every compass needs a true north, right? For corporate governance in India, that starts with a foundation of clear rules. It's about making sure everyone is reading from the same playbook. And that playbook really has two main authors. First, you've got the Companies Act of 2013. Think of this as the fundamental rulebook for all companies operating in India, big or small. But if a company is listed on the stock market, they have another layer of oversight, SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India. SEBI is like the referee for the big leagues, making sure the publicly traded companies stick to even stricter standards to protect you, the investor. And what's the whole point of all these regulations? It all boils down to one simple, crucial element: trust. You can't have a healthy market without it, and you definitely can't have trust without transparency. The entire system is built to shine a light on what companies are doing. So what does that transparency actually look like? Well, companies are legally mandated to share a ton of information. We're talking detailed annual reports, financial updates every quarter, and they have to disclose any deals made with related parties, to stop any shady self-dealing. They even have to share their plans for managing risk. This isn't just good practice, it's the law. Of course, having a great rulebook is one thing, but it's pretty useless if no one is there to actually enforce the rules. So that brings up the next question. Who are the guardians making sure all of this is actually happening? This is where we get to the people at the heart of the system, the folks on the board of directors. You can think of them as the umpires, whose job it is to call the shots and ensure fair play. Now, a good, healthy board needs two kinds of directors. You have your executive directors. These are the insiders, the people running the company day to day. But to keep things balanced, the law says you must have independent directors. These are the outsiders. They're brought in specifically for their unbiased, objective judgment. They're there to make sure management isn't just marking its own homework, so to speak. And the board itself is designed like a system of checks and balances. It's not just one group of people making every decision. No, it's broken down into specialized committees. You've got a nomination committee that finds the right people for the job. A remuneration committee figures out fair pay so executives aren't just setting their own salaries. And maybe most importantly, an audit committee, which independently checks the company's financial health. It's a machine with all these interlocking parts designed to keep each other honest. And the end goal of this entire elaborate structure, it's really just to make sure the board is acting responsibly. And not just for the big investors, but in the interest of all stakeholders. That means everyone from employees and customers to the smallest shareholder. Okay, so we've got the rules and we've got the people. But to really keep that compass pointing true north, a company needs something more. It needs an internal conscience, a real commitment to ethics. This is where a company's culture gets put down on paper. We're talking about things like clear codes of conduct that every single employee has to live by. Strong whistleblower policies, so that if someone sees something wrong, they can report it without fear of retaliation. And of course, robust internal controls that are designed from the ground up to prevent fraud. This is the stuff that aligns what a company does every day with what it should do. A really big piece of this ethical framework is about protecting the company's owners, the shareholders. And what's interesting about Indian corporate governance is the special focus it places on making sure that minority shareholders, the little guys, have their voices heard and aren't just pushed aside by the major players. So what tools do these shareholders actually have? Well, there are a few key mechanisms. E-voting is a big one. It lets them vote from anywhere. Grievance redressal systems give them a formal way to raise a complaint. And of course, shareholder meetings are their chance to look leadership in the eye and ask tough questions. Plus, there are proxy advisory firms that offer independent research to help them make smart decisions. It's all about empowerment. Now, a modern corporate compass can't just point towards this quarter's profits. It has to look further out, towards the horizon. It has to consider the company's impact on society and its reputation on the global stage.
And this is where India does something really unique. It has mandatory CSR, or corporate social responsibility spending. The law actually requires companies of a certain size to spend a slice of their profits on social development projects. This directly connects a company's success to the well-being of the community around it. So what you end up with is this fascinating dual focus. On one hand, companies have this very local, inward-looking responsibility through these CSR mandates. But on the other hand, to attract global investment, they're also aligning themselves with international standards like OECD guidelines and ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance frameworks. It's a balancing act, being a good citizen at home and on the world stage.
So, we've looked at all the individual parts. Now, let's put it all together. Let's assemble the full compass and see why this entire system matters so much for India's corporate world. So here's a quick recap of the key systems we've walked through. You've got the legal frameworks, the board governance structure, disclosure rules, ethics programs, shareholder rights, CSR mandates, risk management, and global alignment. See how they all fit together? Each part is absolutely critical for the whole thing to work. And what's the point of it all? What's the payoff for getting this right? Well, it leads to 3 core outcomes. First, accountability. Someone is always answerable. Second, transparency, so everyone knows what's going on. And third, sustainability, making sure that growth isn't just for today, but is built to last for the long haul. So the bottom line is this. India's corporate governance compass isn't just a bunch of boring rules for accountants and lawyers. It's actually a national framework. It's designed to build trust, to attract investment, and ultimately, to make sure that as companies grow, that growth benefits the entire nation in a balanced way. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. A compass is only useful if it's accurate, right? As India's economy continues to change so rapidly, with new technologies and global challenges popping up all the time, the big question becomes, how will this compass need to be adjusted or recalibrated for the journey that lies ahead?